We'll stop recording at the end so that you can ask questions, or you're welcome to put them in chat as well. So my name is Jamie Billisbach, and I'm Center Director for the Central Mountain Small Business Development Center. And joining me today is Ron Fore, who is the Vice President of Commercial Loans for High Country Bank. And High Country Bank has also graciously sponsored our Finance Sense series for the entire year. So the first 6 offerings will be highlighted at the end, and we're glad that you're joining us. We're talking about SBA lending essentials today. The Central Mountain SBDC helps businesses grow and prosper, and we do that in several ways. First, offering one-on-one consulting, and we have consultants that are local as well as we access statewide experts. Then we offer free or low-cost training, such as this workshop today, and we assist with access to capital by introducing you to federal, state, and local lenders, assisting you with lean business plans, cash flow, performance, marketing plans, all of that type of thing, and even offering letters of recommendation so that you're able to access funding. Next slide. Our center is in the middle of the state there in the yellow. We cover Chaffee Lake and Park. But this workshop and our center's support is actually accessed through our whole network. We have 15 centers throughout the state. We're managed by the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, who also offers us funding. SBA also is our main grant lender. And then we're supported by America's SBDC as well as OEDIT. Next slide. We offer a variety of workshops. At our center, we kind of group them under topics. So our Lean Up, Start, and Scale series is based on starting and scaling your business. Leading Edge is a 10-week deep dive into business planning that's held every fall. Finance Sense is the one that we're offering today. We also have a mastermind series, Innovative Leadership Marketing Power Hour, which occurs every 2 weeks, Business Ops, and People Ops, which is the old HR model. And then we have 2 annual conferences, the Power of We, which will be held May 19th. You can click on that link to register as well as get details, and the Outdoor Industry Summit, which is September 15th this year. And now I'd like to pass it over to Ron Fore, who will share this workshop today and also a little bit of information about himself. So welcome, Ron.
Sure. Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about the SBA lending essentials and join the SBDC and help getting some of this information out to the greater public. As Jamie said, I'm the Vice President of Commercial Loans with High Country Bank. We serve Chaffee, Fremont, and Boulder County through our various branches. I'm from Salida as well, so I graduated high school here. Went to college in Alamosa at Adams State University to play some basketball, and then got the opportunity to move back to Salida and do some commercial lending. But through my time down in Alamosa, as well as with High Country Bank, I've been able to be exposed to quite a bit of the SBA financing side of things, and just happy to be able to talk about it with you guys here today. So let's go ahead and dive on into what sort of the big starting point for what makes your business eligible for an SBA loan. The main key points here is that it's, obviously a for-profit business. So all of your nonprofit 501c3s do not qualify for any SBA financing, and that it's located within the United States. The good news is that the requirements from a size and profitability standpoint do leave most businesses open for this. So as long as your net worth value of your business is less than $15 million and your after tax profit is less than 5 over the last 2 years, you qualify for both 504 and SBA 7A financing. On commercial real estate that is existing and you're going to purchase it or renovate it, you must occupy 51% of that property and building, which is where you tip over from owner occupied versus a non-owner occupied facility. And then if you are building or constructing your property, you have to occupy 60% of that. And lastly, as an individual, you have to be willing to guarantee the loan that is originated with the SBA. Now, ineligible businesses include, anything involved with illegal activity, any type of gambling or speculative development, loan packaging or investments, or your payday loan shops, anything along that does not qualify, as well as your nonprofits. Let's kind of talk about the differences between the two programs that are considered the more common avenues for SBA financing. You have your 504 program and your 7A program. Now, the general rule of thumb here is if you're purchasing a piece of property or constructing your commercial real estate, the financial institution that you're working with is going to go with the 504 program. And that is primarily because the 504 program will take 40% of that loan off of the bank's books once the loan closes. So that significantly reduces the risk for the lending institution. If you're acquiring a business, or you're purchasing equipment, or you're starting up and you need working capital, you will most likely end up going the 7A route, because that guarantee on the SBA 7A side helps mitigate the institution's risk when there's a lack of collateral from a blue sky type of standpoint. So the only other thing is that the 504 does offer debt refinance capabilities in both a standalone refinance as well as an expansion refinance. So for the 504 side first, you'll see that these loans can range from $25,000 to $5.5 million, obviously depending on the product and business model. The 504 program utilizes a certified development company, and this is a nonprofit organization that's certified by the SBA to help finance SBA 504 loans in partnership with lending institutions. So this CDC will essentially take the second half of the loan away from the bank that will be serviced by the CDC, and they will hold a second lien position behind the bank. So as you can see in this pie graph over here on the left, the equity structure of a 504 loan will typically be 10% from the borrower, 50% from the bank, and 40% from the CDC. Now, initially, the bank will have 90% of this loan. The CDC will usually close their portion of the loan within 90 to 120 days, and they would either pay off the second loan the bank produced or pay down the first portion that the bank produced at a 40% equity amount, so that the bank's LTV will be 50% and the CDC will be at 40%, and then the borrower will have put in their 10. Now that 10% can change depending on the type of project that you are undergoing. If it's new construction, that number can change, go up to 15% or 20%. If it's a startup, that number can go up to 15% or 20%. And if it's both, it will definitely go up to 20%. So keep that in mind when you're envisioning this equity structure and what your project entails. As I mentioned, this loan will start as one large loan or two loans split with the lending institution. At High Country Bank, we will produce two loans, the smaller of which is the one that the CDC will pay off. The loan terms can be 10, 20, or 25 years based on the type of loan. This 504 loan can be utilized for larger equipment purchases, which would realistically be the only loan terms that would be in the 10-year threshold. Otherwise, for most real estate transactions, you will be in the 20 or 25-year structure. The institution's loan term, for how the rate is fixed, will have to match the CDC portion. So for instance, most financial institutions right now reprice more frequently than an SBA 504 loan would. And when you do an SBA 504 loan, the institution will match the pricing structure from a how often it can adjust standpoint with the CDC. The institution does control the rate it charges, but it has to adjust at the same terms as the CDC's portion. So if our loan is a 25-year loan amortization with a 10-year loan maturity on the bank portion, our interest rate cannot adjust more frequently than that 10-year term. The institution portion can adjust, but the CDC portion will not. It will be fixed for the entire duration of the loan, and the CDC will work with the bank and the borrower to make sure that it is very clear what the interest rate will do if it does anything. The CDC's portion of interest will be set when they close. So if the bank produces two loans, the interest rate on the second portion that gets paid off will be set at the time it gets paid off by the CDC. And again, this typically takes 3 to 4 months in order to wrap up that CDC loan. And that will be a totally separate closing or loan signing. And the CDC will have its own loan fees structured as well as the bank's loan fees. So you'll have two different times where you're paying for both. Why you would like to use the 504 program or what benefits there are is that this allows financial institutions to have more clients available. So it's beneficial to both the institution and the individual. And they're readily available with competitive interest rates and long-term fixed rate loans on the CDC portion. Most financial institutions currently operate based on Wall Street Journal Prime's interest rates, which are at 7.5. And we had a 504 loan close recently that was at 6.5. So typically the CDC's portion is going to be below what normal market interest rates are currently sitting at, which is obviously a great benefit to the borrower. Another benefit to the borrower is that they have a lower down payment requirement depending on the type of project that they're looking at purchasing or starting. So if you're even in the instance where you had to put 20% down on a 504 loan because you're starting up a new business and you're building a new commercial real estate property, most lending institutions are going to require more than that for a conventional loan in today's times. And if you are buying an existing business with an existing structure that you're not renovating, you're only required to put 10% down. So it can be a good trade-off for the individual where you may have some fees that you're paying to the CDC and to the bank, but those can be rolled into the loan amount and therefore your down payment is sufficient for the business you're trying to acquire. Then for the lending institution, they only become responsible for 50% of the total project financing. So while it starts off at 90%, once the CDC portion comes in and pays the bank down, it puts the bank in a great first lien position, and it allows the bank to look at these loans that would typically be riskier, but because the SBA is willing to take on a portion of that risk with the institution or bank, it allows the deal to move forward. Some things to consider when you're applying for a 504 loan is that the interest rates are going to differ between the lending institution and the CDC. The CDC's rate is going to be lower than the institution's. I would say 99 times out of 100. If it's not, then the lending institution is really doing a good job by the borrowers, for the borrowers, because like I mentioned before, the CDC will often issue rates that are lower than market Wall Street Journal prime rates are at. So the fees are charged by both lending institution and by the CDC. So for instance, High Country Bank, if we're producing 2 loans for your 504 loan request, we will charge you a fee based on the 50% portion that the bank will continue to carry and serve. The CDC will then charge their fees against the 40%, 30 to 40% that they are taking. So you will have 2 different times that you're paying fees on your loan, and the CDC's portion ranges from approximately 2.5 to 2.65% of their loan portion, and this includes their servicing and origination fees, closing costs, any legal fees, things of that nature. The last thing I have on this slide is that the borrower will have to decide if they want to form a holding entity and an operating entity, or just form an operating entity. We see a lot of structures going both ways. I will say more commonly, a holding entity that is then paid rent that from the operating entity is the most common entity structure that we see, and the SBA likes to see it that way as well. Now, moving towards the 7A program, this does not have 2 parties involved. This is strictly with your lending institution and their what turns out to be a 75 or an 85% SBA guarantee through the 7A program. Again, these loans can be up to $5 million, and they don't have a minimum loan requirement. However, based on some of the fees and structure involved, it may not make sense for smaller, in the $10,000 range loans to be enrolled into the 7A program. As I mentioned, this is entirely based with the lending institution. The SBA will provide documentation that says that they're issuing their guarantee, but you will not have a separate closing with a CDC. This will be entirely managed through your lending institution. 7A loans include their general 7A program, the small 7A program, cap lines, export express 7A loans, and international trade 7A loans. Cap lines are then further split between working capital, builders cap lines, seasonal cap lines, and contract cap lines. Generally, 7A loans are provided to small businesses that don't meet conventional loan requirements from a lending institution. And this is due primarily to a lack of collateral, a lack of down payment, and a lack of existing cash flow, or some combination of all of these factors. So the benefit to the bank is that they can shore up some of their collateral shortfall or risk associated with the loan while still being able to produce the loan for the potential borrower. SBA 7A loan structures, as I mentioned, are all established with the financial institution. So the interest rates are set by the lending institution, and they vary depending on the size of the loan, the term of the loan, and whether they're fixed or variable rates. Cash flow is another factor, credit scores, business plan, all of these things kind of get baked into the lending institution's decision on how to price your loan. And again, this is usually based on the Wall Street Journal prime rate that it's sitting at today. The lending institution and fees. So guaranteed fees generally range between 3 and 3.5% of the total loan amount. And this money goes directly to the SBA. This isn't what the institution would receive. So the institution does have the right to charge over and above that so that the bank gets some of the origination costs as well. There is an ongoing fee that is established by the SBA. They charge a packaging fee, and both the SBA 7A and 504 have prepayment penalties associated with the loan. So that's no additional principal payments. You're given an amortization schedule, and that's what you follow. If you put even $100 against additional principal a month, you are subject to some prepayment penalties through both of these programs, though they are applied differently, and we'll go into that later on. So the collateral for both programs is as I mentioned before. The 504 is generally your commercial real estate transactions, your construction transactions, or your large equipment transactions. The lending institution is going to hold the first deed of trust or lien position against that property, and the CDC is going to hold the second once their portion of your loan is taken out. The 7A loan collateral is generally what we call a blanket, which means it covers everything. UCC filing on all of your business's assets. This includes cash, accounts receivable, equipment, inventory, any intangibles, general intangibles, things of that nature. And as I mentioned, this kind of encompasses all of what the transaction is for. So if you're buying your business in your hometown and you get a fridge and some inventory or something along those lines, if you're a restaurant, all of those assets will be included as collateral for the purchase. The 7A program may require junior lien positions on any personal real estate held that has more than 25% equity in it. In situations where your 7A loan is under collateralized by the SBA standards, they will come in and ask for you to pledge your, any investment property you own or your primary residence that you own if there is more than 25% equity in it to help cover that shortfall. This did change recently. Previously, the 7A program would require it regardless of the equity in the property. But now, if there is not a provable 25% equity portion, the SBA may not require that junior lien position. Both programs require the collateral that is being financed to be pledged to be the collateral for your loan. So if you're acquiring property, if you're acquiring equipment, or you're acquiring assets, inventory, or accounts receivable, those items will have to be the collateral for the 7A or 504 loan. The differences between these two programs, like we mentioned on the prepayment penalties, on the 504 side, they exist for 10 years. As we mentioned, these are typically your real estate deals, so they're normally amortized over 20 or 25 years, and your prepayment penalty exists for 10 of those, and it stair steps down each year as you continue to make payments. But you do have one for the full 10-year mark. The 7A prepayment penalty is for 3 years, and it also reduces each year. And traditionally, they're on what's called a 531 prepayment penalty. And what that stands for is 5% of the principal balance of the loan, 3%, and then 1%. So in the third year, if you refinance the loan, you would pay a 1% prepayment penalty to the SBA. The rate on the CDC portion for the 504 loan is generally very competitive and is fixed for the full loan term. Generally, it's below current market rates. Whereas on the 7A program, you are more at the discretion of your lending institution and what their pricing philosophy is. I've seen these, obviously we're governed, all lending institutions are governed by the state and the federal regulators so that interest rates cannot exceed a larger number. But it is up to the institution's discretion on the rates for both their portion of the 504 loan and for the entire 7A loan. For the 504 loan, your fees are generally lower in this program overall, even at the 2.5%, 2.65% of the CDC portion, and after paying the bank's portion, because the 7A guarantee fees can be quite high, especially as you get into the larger loan amounts where they start requiring a higher fee percentage. The equity portion towards the borrower is generally less on the 504 side, largely because on the 7A side, you're lacking some down payment or some collateral to get the loan accomplished. So the 7A side will have that lack of down payment or that lack of collateral, and that's why it's utilized. But the 504, 10 to 20% equity is less than conventional loans for most institutions today. They have similar loan terms from a duration of your loan. The 504 is set at 10, 20, or 25 years. And the 7A can have any term that the borrower decides is correct for them, but only up to the 25 years. And in both situations, your loan would be fully amortized based on the loan term. On the 504 side, you may have a maturity balloon on both the 504 and 7A side. But on the 504 side, even with that balloon, you're still fully amortized. The 504 has one other wrinkle to it in that it offers both expansion and standalone refinance options. Without getting too far into the weeds on that, the expansion refinance option for the 504 would require a 1-to-1 loan amount in order to actually refinance that way. So if you had $1 million SBA 504 loan and you're planning on expanding your property, your portion of expansion would have to equal $1 million in order to qualify for that type of refinance. This is a hot topic, obviously, is what's needed from our borrowers or our individuals for 7A loans. You're gonna, I'm sorry, not 7A, but SBA loans in general, 504, 7A, or any of the various programs through 7A. You're gonna have a loan application. You're gonna have cost documents that you have to provide, whether that's a budget for your construction project, or that's an invoice for the equipment that you're buying or the business that you're acquiring. You're going to have 3 years of business tax returns if available. Now, if this is a startup entity, you obviously won't have those and you'll provide projections instead. But if this is a business that you're acquiring or you've been in operation, then the institution and SBA will be required to collect your tax returns as well as your interim financial statements. So if you've been in operation in 2021 and haven't filed your 2021 taxes yet, you'll be required to provide a profit and loss and balance sheet for that business, dated within 4 months of your loan application. And in that instance, you'll also be required to provide projections. So when you're acquiring a business or starting one up, both programs are going to require 2 years of projections at a minimum. The first year is going to be monthly projections. And this did change where the second year can now be annual, but projections, but they used to require 2 years of monthly projections for both profit and loss statements and balance sheets. If you have any other affiliated businesses that contribute cash flow to yourself individually or towards the project, you will be required to provide those. You'll be required to provide your organizational and entity documents as well, so that the SBA knows who its borrower is, and the ownership structure that exists for one or both businesses. You'll be required to provide any lease documentation you have or any previous SBA financing documents. So if you have an existing SBA 504 or 7A loan, you will be required to provide your closing instructions, promissory notes, deed of trust associated with that SBA loan with this request. If you have defaulted on any government debt, be that educational loans or previous 7A 504 loans, those generally get denied based on previous performance history. So keep that in mind if you're applying for a new SBA loan and you already have a bad track record with an existing SBA loan. Then what do financial institutions look for, even beyond what is sort of required for an SBA loan? We're looking for lean business plans. We're looking for the idea that you guys are trying to accomplish, and we want it to be cohesive and coherent to make sense and be showing the direction that the business is headed, even if you're just starting it up. So if you're just starting up and you're building a property, then the business plan can detail what those processes look like, when you're anticipating finishing, getting your certificate of occupancy, and actually start operating out of that property. As we mentioned in the eligibility requirements, this doesn't include any speculative or passive income properties. So you can't build a short-term rental and have that in the SBA 504 program or 7A program. This is more for building your business's structure or acquiring your business, and the business plan should follow that. We mentioned the cash flow projections on the previous slide, but making sure that you're capturing your sector's normal operating expenses, understanding how many people you're ready to serve to actually generate your gross revenues. Those assumptions are going to be required by the SBA, but the lender should certainly be looking for them too, and they should be the ones helping you kind of explain why those assumptions make sense. If you've got a 40-person restaurant and you're saying that you're going to serve 1,000 people per hour, that obviously doesn't make sense. So understanding where your assumptions are coming from and making sure they're actually feasible projections are both the lenders and the SBDC's prerogative. We want to make sure that we're setting you up for success for these things. Obviously, the more experience you have in the industry or employees you already have, make a strong case for your loan application. So if you've been in the restaurant industry for 20 years and you want to start up a new one, you've sold your previous one, you're ready to start up a new one, that experience goes a long way into understand for the lender to understand that you know what you're doing while you're running a restaurant. You're not somebody that just got out of high school and doesn't have an idea on what running a restaurant actually looks like. So additional experience that you gleaned from past employment or current employment for that matter, it is very beneficial. Every institution is going to have its own credit score requirements. So make sure you check with who you're planning on utilizing for your financing to understand what the credit score requirements are going to be before you get started. Obviously, any additional assets you have go a long way. If these are substantial enough, you may qualify for conventional financing, and you might not need SBA lending. For the sake of this discussion, we're assuming that you have a low down payment percentage that you can hit. You don't have excess liquidity or cash sitting in the bank or stocks or anything like that to liquidate in order to accomplish what you're trying to. From a loan perspective, or your equity is primarily in your residence or real estate outstanding that you don't have the liquid assets to put in a significant 25% down payment on a piece of property or normal equipment purchase. And that's why you're looking at going a government guaranteed route. Then the final thing here is personal guarantees. These are going to be required for both 504 and 7A programs. The general rule of thumb is that if you're a 20% or more owner in the business, you would be required to guarantee that loan for a financial institution, regardless of whether or not it's an SBA project. But from an SBA perspective, if you own more than 20% of the business involved, that's going to be the borrower or the guarantor, you will be required to personally guarantee the loan as well. Jamie, I think that's what I've got for SBA financing.
That is wonderful. I learned a lot myself. So
Good.
thank you, Ron. I wanted to say that in a moment, we'll stop recording so that you're able to ask Ron questions directly. But also, if you're watching this on demand, you can reach out to Ron directly. We will put that in the slide deck. But you can also reach out to us because that's what SBDC Center does. We help with Lean Canvas. We actually have Lean Canvas and Lean Business Plan development segments occurring February 1st and 2nd, as well as the beginning of March. And in those segments, we take you through everything from cash flow to performance to marketing strategies, key metrics, channels of distribution, all those types of things. So we're here to help you prepare yourself to get an SBA loan or a traditional commercial loan as well. And we encourage you to join us for those trainings and also connect with consulting. And then I wanted to showcase the next 5 High Country Bank sponsored topics that we'll be talking with our finance sense, which is held monthly. So please learn more by clicking on the link of centralsbdc.org. So thank you, Ron. And we're going to stop recording and open up for questions.
Yeah, really quickly, I would like to piggyback on what Jamie said in that regardless of whether it's SBA financing or general conventional bank financing or any bank related, topics, please feel free to reach out to Jamie or myself. We will get the answer that you to the question that you have. We're here to help. That's what the SBDC is all about. That's why High Country Bank is involved with this, is we want to assist people in our communities, people outside of our communities, with whatever they need help with. Obviously within the confines of what my institution can offer. So we're here to help. We're here to provide information and answer any questions that you've got. So please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us.
So thank you so much.
Okay.